Mixing with Mike plugin of the week comes from Universal Audio. It is part of the Neve Dynamics collection, and this is the Neve 2254E. The Neve's Dynamic collection, includes two plugins that are famous from the Neve world. The 2254, probably one of the more famous compressors out of the Neve world, going all the way back. The original version goes back to 1969. And there were many revisions. This is revision E. The earliest revision did not have a threshold. This has a threshold on it and a few additional features, and some adaptations by UA, which are going to be great. So I'll demonstrate those, and also the 33609. So there's an updated version of the 33609. They're both bridge diode compressors. And the 33609 was designed as a sort of modernized version of this classic 2254E. So they're compatible in some ways, yet they sound distinctly different, and they're both amazing. So I wanted to focus on them one at a time. Let's focus on the 2254 for this video. There'll be a separate video that will come with the 33609. Now, there are two ways that you can open this up, and this is really great. You can open it up in stereo. So and if you open up in a stereo or a mono, it'll look much like this. So you'll see it here, and you see what the normal unit looks like. And this is actually how it was, built. It actually had this sort of, square cassette design. And if you were in stereo, you would have two of them side by side, and that would look something like this. The benefit of having it here in this format here with them side by side is that you can operate them in a linked stereo. So as you would change the settings, it'll change on both. You can unlink them, allowing you to do separate, for the two sides. Once you set your settings, if you want, you could switch it to mono. And sometimes for things like, especially anything that's stereo, having that independent sidechain control and compression control for left and right information can really open up a sound. Sometimes it doesn't make a difference. Just depends on how strong the center strength is of it. For like a mix, sometimes it's really cool to have that subtle difference between the left and the right to kind of open up the mix a bit. So a really cool option. So what we have here is essentially a limiter and a compressor. The signal flow goes for the input, compressor first, limiter second, and then straight to the output. So what we have here in the center panel here is some controls that link or unlink, make it mono or stereo in terms of the side controls. There's a high-pass filter. Now, this doesn't exist on the original unit, but this is a high-pass filter for the sidechain. So this allows you to filter out low-frequency energy that maybe causes some undue pumping and breathing. And so, which is, that is natural to it. So if you want to stay that way, keep it off. Otherwise, it goes all the way up to 500 hertz. And that's incredibly helpful for just the logistics of using it. There's a wet-dry control for mix. There's also a headroom control. So this will operate normally at a -16 reference, and you could dial it backward or forward. Sometimes you set up mix, you say, what would it sound like if I compressed it more, and you could change the headroom, and it would compress more without changing any of the settings. Just on a digital end, raises the input level, lowers the output level. It doesn't mean it's always going to be unity gain, because if you hit more compression, then it'll probably sound lower in level on the output. But it's still a very handy tool, and you can make up the total output gain here digitally with this output gain control right here. If you turn the whole unit off, it actually takes away the processing from your UAD cards. So that's a good way, like for a hard power off. Otherwise, you have the bypass control here for a soft bypass that allows you to transition without clips or glitches or clicks or pops and stuff. Otherwise, the compressor itself, it has a meter. It's identical on both sides, so I'll just do one side here. It'll show input, output, or it'll show the control, which is the gain reduction. So if you're displaying input, then you look at the meter on the left, right, which will show you your level there. If you're looking at gain reduction or control, then that will show vertical here. So you'll see that with the numbers, the black numbers on the right-hand side. The limiter and compressor could be operated independently of each other. So you could turn them both out and just get just a little bit of analog, joy just from, going through the electronics. minus the compression and limit circuit. So there's one way that you could do there for an analog coloration. Actually sounds quite cool. And then what they added in was a slow attack time. This is something that was not part of the original unit. It had a fast attack time. Fast attack time was on the compressor is 5 milliseconds, and if you go to the slow attack, it gives you a 25 milliseconds. This is really a great option and really opens up the possibilities in terms of the way that you use it. On the compress section, you have a compress ratio, and so you have 1.5 to 1 for a lighter compression, up to 6 to 1. What you'll get with each of these different settings is somewhat of a warmer sounding compression. It's not really an aggressive style compression. It's meant to kind of smooth in. I'm not sure if you could call it soft knee, but as a broadcast limiter, which was part of its original design, it's a little bit more like that. And it has just like a certain characteristic sound, and going and throwing a lot of level into it and compressing pretty heavily, it's almost designed that way, as are a lot of the broadcast limiters. They're designed for kind of heavy compression and control of the signal. You have a threshold here that works for the compressor, so that's independent. And then you have the release control. Now, the release control has the normal settings that you would see on the 2254, 400, 800, 1.5 seconds, and auto release, right? So this is program dependent. And then they have a very cool feature here, which is a pull divide by 8. So if we just do the pull, click on that, it'll raise the knob up here. And now you divide these numbers by 8, anything except for the auto setting. So now 400 becomes 50 milliseconds. This becomes 100 milliseconds. This becomes approximately 200 milliseconds. So what you have there with the pull divide by 8 is now the ability to work with a much faster release time. Again, this is a feature that was not available on the original, right? So the slow attack and the additions of that make it a much more functional compression for a lot of individual tracks, and pumping and breathing style compression in while capturing that real Neve characteristic. So very cool addition there by Universal Audio. The gain makeup is only for the compression stage, and then that feeds into the limiter stage, which is here. So you have the limiter level. This is like the threshold. So where you set this, from the highest down to the lowest level here, you'll get more limiting if you're down this way. If you're not getting enough, then you could drive more gain makeup from the output of the compressor. And, even if you wanted a minimum or no compression at all, you could have this set up to 10 and just drive the gain going into the limiter to get it to kick in. And then you have a limit recovery, everything from 100 milliseconds to an auto setting here. So 100, 200, 800, and auto. So this is just like the original. The limiter also has a fast and a slow attack. Now, the fast attack is 100 microseconds. So basically 0.1 milliseconds for those keeping score at home. And the slow attack is 5 milliseconds. So we have, and then off obviously disables it from the circuit. So those are the basics of it. So if you kind of divide it up, it's a little bit awkward to kind of look at, but these guys are for the limiter, and this turns it off or sets the setting on it. Compression is all of these knobs right here, and then the makeup gain here is, so these guys here are all the compressor, and then this is the output gain, which feeds into the limiter section. So that's the basics of it, and I think now we could just kind of go into some audio examples. If I find anything that I missed there, I'll kind of I'll bring it up in process here. So let's start with the drums. I kind of set up a compression thing here on the stems here for this track, just to kind of do a little bit more of focus work, within a mix that I have going here. And so I have drums and bass for this reggae track. So let's just pick it up from here and just kind of listen to a little bit of this in and out, and I'll talk about a bit about what I did here. So I have a little bit more gain going on here. I'll kind of click in. When we go to this, the makeup gain works in 2 dB increments, as the original does. But there is an output gain control here, which goes in 1 dB increments. So I can find that in between place right there. And this was just to kind of do a simple pump and breathe. So here I'm using the pull here on this to get a 50 millisecond release, and then putting the high pass filter up here, whatever that number is, can't get an exact number on this, just to kind of get the bass and the low end resonance of the kick drum from over triggering or kind of holding up or gumming up the release. So, so the basic idea, there's no limiter in this section. We'll go through the limiter here, 4-to-1 ratio. And if the thing about the ratio, which is very cool, is that you can actually get a more transparent kind of sound if that's what you're looking for. By going with the lighter ratio, like 1.5-to-1, you can get a thicker sound if you go up towards 6-to-1 and everything in between. And this is an important thing to know, because as you're working with it, if you say have guitars, for example, and the guitars are kind of a bit brittle or harsh and you wanted to add some body to them, this would be one way to go about doing it. So like if I have some guitars like I do right here, let's see. Right, so just to show you the extremes, of course you're going to get a bit less compression there with 1.5-to-1, and then you would just lower the threshold accordingly. So let's just see if I can dial in a quick number here. And then compare that to 6-to-1. And let's hear that, what that difference is with the drums here. So that actually sounds pretty cool. If I wanted to, I could kick in, like I have the limiter here. I'm not sure if this is doing anything. Here, let me just crank it up, see. I'm getting a little bit of limiting. I kind of like it, but I'm not sure how much of that is just kind of gain, a little bit of extra gain on it, but I'll kind of roll with it here. So, you know, just a kind of a little bit of setting there with the limiter, and especially with that fast attack setting with that 0.1 milliseconds, it really will grab onto peaks pretty aggressively. Let's see, we have some keyboards. This is a classic thing where you might use you know, use an auto release kind of thing, like which is really a broadcast kind of thing. I'm not sure. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. This doesn't work. The pull divide by 8 doesn't work with the auto recovery. And let's see, the limiter is kind of set up here, but I don't think it's really doing anything. I'm just going to shut it out here for a second. But let's play around with this a little bit and see if we can dial in maybe a warmer sound for these keys. You really hear that like just beautiful focus that brings in there. So let's bring in the lead vocal, that richness and warmth. It's just really beautiful. Just loving this emulation. Let's go with some vocals here for a second. Now, with this, I could play around with a couple of things. Here, I just have an auto release setting, but I want to try to do something here to kind of bring the vocal out. And this is a classic place where we might want to kind of breathe, make the vocals kind of breathe a bit more. So let's see, I'll leave the limiter out. I have a slow attack setting here for the vocal, and let's go with a super fast release and see what we can get from that.
Me get up and me fresh up and say yes, Lord. Yes, Lord. Me dress up with the best up on me left yard. A straight positivity me manifest, and me know upon my blessings. John and go press pass. Go down a head tracks, that's the best part. Cliff line up a rhythm, me have a tune for bless hearts. Tell them how me feeling and what we dealing with. Revelation, I'm feeling good, I'm feeling fine. Now go make nobody blow my eye. I'm feeling good, I'm feeling fine. Now make no negative energy kill my vibes. Me have to keep me energy high, for real. Me no biggie, me no ready fi die. But if I sound just say, then me ready fi fly. Like a bird in the morning, me take to the sky and spread me wings like an eagle. I soar high over people. Play this in your vehicle, your headphones or your Bluetooth speaker. This are the stress reliever. I'm feeling good, I'm feeling fine. Now go make nobody blow my.
Like that release there, that fast release is really powerful as a way to kind of bring up some of the, ends of phrases and the stuff all between the words and stuff that helps you to really hear the focus and clarity. Let's bring out the hook background parts here for a second and do something. So here I probably want to bring in a little bit of warmth. It looks like I already did that with the auto kind of broadcast setting. 6-1. Let's check this out. Oops, that's not what we want to see.
I'm feeling good, I'm feeling fine. I'm feeling good, I'm feeling fine. Now make no blow my eye. I'm feeling good, I'm feeling fine. I'm feeling good, I'm feeling fine. Now make no negative energy kill my vibe.
They could go with
so just say, ooh.
Go with normal 400 release here.
I'm feeling good, I'm feeling fine. I'm feeling good, I'm feeling fine. Now make no blow my eye. I'm feeling good, I'm feeling fine. I'm feeling good, I'm feeling fine. Now make no negative energy kill my vibe. Me have to keep me energy high, for real. Me no biggie, me no ready fi die. But if a soldier say, then me ready fi fly. Like a bird in the morning, me take to the sky and spread me wings like a eagle. I soar high over people. Play this in your vehicle, your headphones or your Bluetooth speaker. This a the stress reliever. I'm feeling good, I'm feeling fine. I'm feeling fine. Now ain't now gonna make nobody blow my mind. I'm feeling good, I'm feeling fine. Feeling good, I'm feeling fine. Now ain't no negative energy kill my vibe. Feeling fine, meditating at the evening time.
You need to really hear how that kind of just opens up the mix and focuses everything. And then one final thing here that I wanted to kind of go over. This is like a mixed parallel, where I really dig into the limiter settings here. Kind of keep the limiter recovery slow because we wanted to really just kind of grab onto the sound, where the auto recovery will give an initial faster release based on the content coming in. The 800 millisecond release will just kind of hold on to the signal with the gain reduction and kind of solidify it. So in a parallel, in this case, rather than getting it to pump and breathe, I feel like I have the life that I need. Now I just want perhaps a little bit more focus. So this is going to be hitting some pretty heavy gain reduction. You'll see the meter here, and then I'm going to bring this in down here, and then we'll hear it kind of blend in. All right, so just kind of check out the gain reduction here. Sorry for moving this around. I'm going to have to back up. There we go. Here we go.
I'm feeling good, I'm feeling fine. I'm feeling fine. Now gonna make nobody blow my eye. I'm feeling good, I'm feeling fine. I'm feeling fine. Now make no negative energy kill my vibe. Me have to keep me energy high, for real. Me no biggie, me no ready fi die. But if a soldier say, then me ready fi fly. Like a bird in the morning, me take to the sky and spread me wings like a eagle. I soar high over people. Play this in your vehicle, your headphones or your Bluetooth speaker. This a the stress reliever. I'm feeling good, I'm feeling fine. I'm feeling fine. Now ain't now gonna make nobody blow my eye. I'm feeling good, I'm feeling fine. I'm feeling fine. Now ain't no negative energy kill my vibe. Feeling fine, meditating at the evening time. In the rising, give thanks to see yet another day. It feels so nice, me have to make the world know how me feel inside. Give thanks and praise that me friend.
They have nothing going on here, but it actually it just sounds really good. So when I bypass it here and take it in and out, I have it kind of calibrated for unity gain. So it is, you're hearing a compatibility with and without the level change. But just the focus and the clarity that this brings in, really just amazing. The added features are just incredible in terms of just moving it beyond like its normal use case, which sometimes can be limiting because you get these extreme, often can get these extreme changes in gain reduction. It's really designed for broadcast, but and normally you could deal with those things if you can control the sidechain, like with the high pass filter there for the sidechain. But having these additional controls with the slow attack time and the divide 8 on the release time really expands the palette of possibilities with this. So great one from UA. This one, I've been wanting them to do this. I've wondered why is it taken so long for them to come out with the 2254, considering that vintage emulations are really their domain, their territory, and this is such a classic limiter. So it was just a great surprise to see this one come in with the update, and then the 33609 video review will be coming up soon. That is also a masterpiece. All right, there you go. The UA from the Neve Dynamics collection, Neve 2254E. It is the plugin of the week.